Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
So, on so many levels, ALIGARH was important. For me, if you ask me personally, yes, it was cathartic. Yes, I had seen so many people, some friends of mine who had died before their time, people who had taken their lives, people who had died of illnesses related to their lifestyles, and it to be able to tell this story and to be able to give voice to this anguish, I think was a great opportunity.
Hey folks, my name is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. Welcome to a brand new episode. On today's episode, we'll be chatting with a person closely associated with two very important films of my generation, Satya and ALIGARH. Both films are quite special, and for a number of reasons. We'll talk about all that and much more with Apurva Asrani. Asrani needs no introduction, but I will provide one anyways, just for the record. Asrani has scripted some of the most compelling films of our times, including ALIGARH, Shahid, and Waiting. He has also collaborated, in the capacity of an editor, with some of the best storytellers in the last 25 years or so. Asrani has worked with Ram Gopal Verma, Kalpana Lajmi, Nagesh Kukunoor, and Hansal Mehta, amongst others. We'll be chatting about his creative takeaways from working with these directors, as well as his approach to editing. Asrani has also been an early openly gay member of the Mumbai film fraternity and has been one of the leading champions of LGBTQ rights in India. Apurva and I chatted about everything from Satya and Ram Gopal Verma to ALIGARH and Made in Heaven. We discussed the challenges of cutting a brilliant performance like that of Manoj Bajpayee's in ALIGARH. And I also asked Apurva if ALIGARH was cathartic in a way, as a writer who also happens to be gay. He spoke compassionately and candidly on the struggles of young gay men in India, and also touched on why it's so important for many closeted influential names from all walks of life to come out. We also spoke about some of the early Hindi films with underlying themes of homosexuality and homophobia, like Deepa Mehta's Fire and Onir's My Brother Nikhil. Apurva was earnest, articulate, and insightful in his responses. In fact, so much so that I didn't edit almost any part of our chat. I decided to keep all of it. I thought you would like listening to every bit of it. Here's part one of my chat with Apurva Asrani. I have to start the chat by asking you about one of the most iconic Hindi movies of all time, right? I would argue that this movie is more than just a movie. And it's essentially a piece of 90s Indian pop culture. Of course, I speak of Ram Gopal Verma's Satya. And can you start out by telling us how you got on board for this movie?
Satya in 95 is when I began my career doing promos for feature films. There used to be a very popular countdown show on a newly launched Channel V called BPLOA.
Okay.
And it started on MTV and then moved to Channel V, newly launched Channel V. And BPLOA essentially was a Bollywood countdown show. But it had very, very interesting, very clever little things in it. Like they had this thing called the masala mix, where what we did was we took, say, a Western song, say a Samantha Fox song or a Michael Jackson song, and we cut it to a music video with Sunil Shetty or Govinda, So various songs of Govinda were cut to sync to that music and,
Right.
and even lip sync, you know. Uh,
Right. Right.
they did an incredible job of that. So that was actually my training ground as an assistant on that show. And when I got down to actually sitting on the editing table, um, I realized that you could do a lot more, on the table, and you could actually change the whole narrative. So that led to doing promos for films, and I worked for this company that backed the contract to do Ram Gopal Verma's underproduction film then called Dord. Did you watch Dord?
Yes, of course. I was a big Ramu and A.R. Rahman fan. So I've seen all of those movies. I, in fact, have them on DVDs.
Yeah, Dord was actually great fun. I mean, it was, I thought, very audacious film, and
It was.
yeah, probably not for mainstream audiences and stuff, but I know that Ram Gopal Verma had a lot of fun making it.
Right. That was right after Rangila, right?
Mhm. And Rangila was great because Rangila just changed the whole landscape, I think.
Yes,
For me,
absolutely.
that was the turning point where I think, as a teenager, I felt like this was an industry that, I could contribute to, and they were now making films that I could relate to. The music of Rangila was phenomenal. The way he shot it and the way he cut it and all of those things. I mean, it just was. In fact, I was at Fantasyland at this amusement park in Bombay when Ram Gopal Verma was shooting a sequence.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's right, right. Okay.
So I must have been like what, I don't know, 15 years old or something like that, and I stood there and watched, the shoot, and I was really enamored by what was going on. And I think there was this desire was born, to work in film, and especially after I saw that film and I saw what was being shot and now how it looked on screen and all of those things. Um, so while doing promos for films, this company that I worked for, Ram Gopal Verma approached them to do promos for Dord, and they asked me if I would like to do it, and I jumped at it, and I said, anything to meet this man.
Right, right.
He was a genius. I don't think anyone has seen. I mean, I don't think we've seen a more versatile filmmaker till date.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've seen Shiva. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
then there
Even Booth and not Booth, I'm sorry, Rat.
Raat,
Yeah.
Revti. And then there was a Telugu film, and I'm half Telugu, so I'd seen his Telugu films as well, like Shanakshanam and stuff.
Yes, yes. That's the Nagarjun one, right?
Yes. So
Yes, yes.
it
Fantastic.
it was a great opportunity, and I remember when that footage arrived, wonderfully shot and Rahman's music, and I started doing this promo with this one vision that when Ram Gopal Verma sees it, he should love it so much that he should want to know who is the person who did this. And I didn't go home for days, and I worked on that edit. Um, and then Ram Gopal Verma came in to watch it, and he's got a very deadpan expression while watching things, and he just, he scratches his face and he looks in some other direction when he's talking to you, and you don't know whether he liked it or he doesn't like it till he actually says it. And I think the first thing he said was mind blowing, mind blowing. Can you play it again? So very elated, I played it again, and we watched it over and over again. Um, and he was very, very impressed with what had happened. And then he asked me to cut some more, and I did that with the same kind of passion that and he really enjoyed that. And then we started hanging out. We both lived in the suburbs, and this was happening in central Bombay, the edit. So he offered to drive me to the suburbs where he was going, and I would sit with him in the car, and then he would say, "Would you like to drop into the edit where we're editing Dord?" And I would say yes. And then he was cutting the film on Steenbeck, And I remember going into that editing room and looking at that setup where, people were still cutting on film at the time. And I think there was one song where he was kind of he was taking his time with the edit, trying to get it right. It was a montage of visuals, and it was O Bhavare Rema.
Yes.
And while watching it, I remember suggesting a few cuts to him. And he would try those cuts out. And, I remember how long it took to, just get one cut on Steenbeck, right? Because you had to mark it, and then you had to cut the rushes,
Right. This is old school, yeah.
School, and then you had to with sellotape stick it together, watch it. It was so intricate, but it took a lot of time. So I remember asking him, I said, why don't you consider cutting, on Avid? And, he said, I don't know all this, this new software and stuff like that. So we were having this chat, and he in the car, he told me about this new film that he was planning to start. And it was about the Mumbai underworld. And I remember it was his red Maruti Esteem. I remember exactly where we were. And it was fascinating, Himanshu, because, it was not just a film, like you said.
Yes.
Even at that point, because it reflected something that was that had taken this country by storm, and the Bombay film industry in particular, which was the nexus it had with the underworld and the extortions, and there were attacks on film producers, and there were extortion attempts, and it was in the news every day, and
absolutely, yeah,
by a certain kind of a fear. This was just a few years after the blasts and all of those things.
Right.
And I remember thinking how brave he was, to want to tell this story. And I said to him, I said, Ramuji, why don't you edit this film on Avid? And he asked me to explain. And I said, this is how it works. You can really it's as quickly as you think you can see your cut. And it's fascinating. And he said, what, Maniratnam, who he knew very well, had just cut his film Iruvar on Avid. So he went and got feedback on that. And then he said to me, Apurva, why don't you cut the film? And I mean, I wouldn't even dare ask him questions like, why me? How am I going to cut it? Do I even edit film? And I said, yes, let's do it. And it was as easy and as simple as that. And he just took a chance on a 17, 18-year-old boy. And he offered me to edit Satya. And then, Satya was a very close-knit team, whether it was Saurabh Shukla, Anurag Kashyap, the writers, whether it was the camera men. There was Jared Hooper from the US, and there was Mazhar Kamran from India. There were all the assistant directors. Everyone kind of hung out together in Ram Gopal Verma's Versova flat, where discussions were being had, look tests were happening. Urmila was trying out different looks, and the actors were jamming with the writers, and we just spent all our time, incubating the film. And I was also assisting him on the film, so I was on the sets when we were shooting it. So yeah, this whole journey of Satya was, I think, not just the film, but even the preparation for it, I think, just set me up for a career in the film industry.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. And as you mentioned, I think like Ramu had that kind of a halo around him, right? I mean, it's where all the cool kids used to hang out, like you said, during that particular time in mid-90s and everything. I think Atul Sabharwal was also there. And he was breaking ground in perhaps, ways more than one with his films. And like you said, he was pretty brave to take on some subjects. So yeah, I can only imagine how cool that must have been.
Yep.
So my next question to you, Apurva, is, Hal Ashby once said that the best place to learn about directing is in the cutting room. And editing is as much a part of storytelling as is writing and direction. Now, you have worked with Ramu, you have worked with Kalpana Lajmi, you have worked with Hansal Mehta, you have worked with Kukunoor. What were some of your creative takeaways from collaborating with all these great storytellers?
Well, each one of the filmmakers you mentioned and the others also who had the opportunity to work with had very distinctive styles. With Ram Gopal Verma at the time when we worked together, I think his style was very organic, very spontaneous. I don't think he ever started out with a bound script for Satya. There was
Very few people did in that time, right? At that time.
uh, yeah, you're right about that. Even Hansal Mehta, with whom I worked with on Chal, did not really have. I mean, he had a script which Suparna Verma wrote, but I think he also played around a lot with it.
Right. There was a lot of improv.
There was a lot of improvisation. There was a lot of additions on set, and there was the opportunity to do something on the editing table. With Ramuji especially, I felt like I was a kid in a candy store because you had all these wonderful actors, with a style of performance that was so rare. Only seen in a couple of films before that, maybe Bandit Queen and Israt Ki Subah Nahi, and
Right.
We weren't getting to see that kind of a realistic kind of a portrayal or performances or dialogue in those days. Um, and so you had all these wonderful rushes, and I had this editing console and this editing room where I could play around with things. And nothing was set in stone that this story has to begin here or end here, or the scene has to contain this or not contain this. It was there was a lot of freedom, which was awarded to every head of department in the film. Hansal also had that style, where he shot things, but having been an editor himself, having cut promos himself, he really respected the space and was very aware of magic that can be achieved on the editing table. With Nagesh, I found a far more planned and a far more respect for the script than with the other directors. I think it's because he studied in the US and had spent a lot of time there and had seen a lot of cinema from there. So he came from a very different school where he did a lot of his experimenting and a lot of his trials and everything on his script. With Kalpana Lajmi, there was she was a voice screaming to get out. She really wanted to reflect things that were going on in society that were irking her. She was very lyrical, very musical. Bhupen Hazarika had a huge influence on her cinema, and even while we were editing it, he would come in and sit in on the edits and really enjoy it because he felt like editing was akin to making music, and he used to always say that to me. So each filmmaker, I think, has a different style, and it was beautiful to be able to learn from these filmmakers. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I guess everybody kind of has their own style, and everybody kind of lends. And it's I guess it's difficult to put a finger on it as to what you took from what director. But I guess it kind of organically kind of comes together in your own style when you tell stories, I guess.
Possibly, yeah. I think that all these filmmakers have influenced my craft as an editor, as a writer, and even the stuff that I've directed. But I can't pinpoint what comes from where. I even spent time with filmmakers like Basu Bhattacharya when I was.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, he would. I was directing this Doordarshan series for the North Belt called Hamari Parampara, produced by Shobha Doctor, who made Hum Log.
Oh,
And
wow. This was before, I'm guessing this was all before Satya and everything,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'd already spent about three and a half years, working in film in the industry before Satya happened to me. Uh,
Okay.
so I had a chance to, direct this show for the North Belt. That was a rural-based program. I think it was to do with, things that, people in villages, the issues that they face and the orthodox mindset that they were trying to do away with. The social ills like dowry and, child marriage and all of those things. So I got a chance because the director that was doing it moved on to do something else. And, I was doing promos for pretty much the same company that I told you about earlier, that Shobha Doctor was associated with. So they called me in to, fill in the director's shoes. And that was a great experience. I mean, and then Basu Bhattacharya, who was a friend of Shobha Doctor's, used to come into the edit and help out because this was a show that she was making after a long time. So he gave me a lot of tips, and I remember his whole style was that the camera should be placed very naturally. Um,
Hmm.
the angles should not be angles that are jarring or stylized for the sake of it. It
They
should
shouldn't be orchestrated, kind of,
it should
right?
be orchestrated. I mean, it's almost like theater on the big screen.
Right.
So the camera, plays the role of the eyes of the viewer. And why would you stand over the head of a person looking down at his or her nose and those kind of,
Right. Right.
um,
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
makes sense. But then I went and worked with Ram Gopal Verma, who didn't give a damn about those rules.
That's Ramu's beauty, right?
Yeah, and it worked. It worked really well. Sorry, there's some disturbance.
That's okay.
If there's one thing that I have learned, and it's only because we're having this conversation that I'm realizing this, is that there are no rules. There is
Absolutely.
no
Right.
right way to tell a story. There is no incorrect way to tell a story. I think each filmmaker, each storyteller, must stay true to his or her grain, and find their voice and put it out there as authentically as possible. And I think that is the one common thing that all these filmmakers had.
Right. Right. Yeah, I guess, I mean, after Ramu, I was just thinking in my mind. I mean, I think Kashyap has been doing that now for many years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
his whole thing is also, I mean, he's pretty much breaking rules with every new film that he's making.
True, true.
Now, I understand you took part in an international experiment to cut a 5-minute cut from Nick Knight's footage of a fashion collection. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And could you tell me more about what this was about? And I saw your cut, and it's very nice. It's like a small montage along the themes of fantasy, and it has a very specific aesthetic to it, I thought. But could you tell me what was the theme that you had assembled your cut along?
Yeah. This is actually one of my most exciting projects. In India, very few people knew about it or talked about it. And I was very excited for people to know about it, just to see the kind of experiment that was being conducted. And
Right.
also very
And this was quite a few years ago, right?
yeah, this was more than 10 years ago.
Okay.
So Show Studio is a very well-known UK arts collective, run by Nick Knight, this well-known fashion photographer.
Right.
And what Nick Knight did was he went and shot, I think it was 12 hours of footage, if I'm not mistaken, um, of John Galliano, the designer's spring collection at the Paris Fashion Week. But this was a very unique fashion week as well, a very unique collection and a presentation by Galliano, because for the first time he put real people on the ramp. He put people with flaws. He put people who were fat, thin, short, exceptionally tall, people who didn't fit the whole, construct of beauty as we know it.
Yeah, and I can imagine there must be a lot of pushback for this kind of ideas back then.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there was. I mean, this was a very highly controversial show as well. Because people thought that he was making fun of a certain kind of people, and Galliano has been very controversial with his work. But I thought it was a wonderful experiment because you had the most interesting characters walking the ramp. You had these 60 something year old twin women who were spinsters, and who absolutely did not match your idea of a ramp model. You had this big burly man with a long mustache. You had a man who was 3.5 feet tall, who was a midget. You had a woman who was extra large size, with beautiful dimples. And so what Nick Knight did was he shot, and all these people were, housed at the Ritz Hotel, and they were suddenly living the lap of luxury, a life they had never seen before during, this event. So Nick Knight shot them, in their rooms, having dinner, making out with each other, having a bath in bathtubs, by the Eiffel Tower. It was exquisite footage, and very beautiful. I mean, when you saw that footage, when I saw that footage, I was just struck by the beauty. And the irony was that these are not conventionally beautiful people.
Right, right. There's certainly a certain aesthetic to it. I only saw your cut, but I could tell from that, it's that it does subscribe to a certain director's aesthetic or a photographer's aesthetic. I could tell that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the very people. They were characters, and when you listen and you watch and you give an audience to people who are characters, people you normally ignore, then they light up. Something from inside of them lights up, and that's exceptionally beautiful. So there was all this footage, 12 hours of footage that went out to, I think 12 filmmakers from around the world. And we all represented, different streams of filmmaking, or different industries. So you had, somebody called, the leading commercial filmmaker, ad filmmaker from the UK called Sam Sneed, who makes, these wonderful 30-second, 1-minute ad films. So he got the footage and he put his spin on it. And then you had, the director of Leaving Las Vegas. Oh God, I forget his name. Mike Figgis.
Yes.
Nominated film. So Mike Figgis represented feature films, and he got that footage, And then there was Anna Span, who is was a leading, I've not followed her work since, a pornography filmmaker. And then there was the Big Brother editing team, which was a reality show. Big Brother had hit it really big in those days, and reality TV was suddenly this phenomenon.
Breaking through, yeah.
So you had 12 hours of footage in the hands, and I was called in to represent Bollywood, for want of a better term, So we were also given 12 music tracks to choose from and to put our spin on it. And I said, I went in saying, I'm not going to do Bollywood. I don't belong to any such thing. I'm just going to be me, right?
Right.
And let's not, conform to any stereotypes here or anything like that. But while cutting it, I realized that my choices were so quintessentially Indian, and also, I mean, I want to use the term Bollywood, but I don't like the term. But yeah, it could actually fit
Hindi cinema, yeah.
Because I used the most lilting romantic track that I could find, and I found a love stories between characters in all the footage. I discarded anything that didn't fit within that, and I found that people, when you fall in love, and when you really fall in love, you're not looking at the superficial. You're not looking at stuff that's just skin deep. You're going deeper. You're looking at a person, a personality, character, goodness, kindness, all of those things. And so a man might be an extremely short person called a midget in our world, but he could be extremely, extremely attractive, when he touches the face of his lover. The two women who are sisters, who've never met another man, they've just been together, they never settled down with someone else, spent their whole lives together. They fantasize about finding love, but they probably can't break out of the comfort zone that they are. So I was able to edit these things in, and coincidentally, I found that the climax of my film is a wedding. You can't get more Bollywood than that.
Right.
It was because I had this celebration where, after the show, everybody was celebrating, having a great time. And I said, this could be a marriage celebration, but I don't have a wedding. I can't create a wedding. And then I found that the guy who, the man who was a midget, and there was another girl who was also of similar height, were made to walk the ramp as the showstoppers, the finale, whatever you call it, right? Sure. And people were throwing flowers at them. And the guy was dressed in, a tuxedo with a hat, and the girl was wearing a white dress. And I said, look, this is a wedding. So I was able to stitch that in towards the end, like a wedding. And, lo and behold, we had a Bollywood film. So it was extremely well received.
Now, I want to talk a lot about ALIGARH. First of all, just a brilliant film. I love this film. The writing is excellent. Everything is so good about this film. And was this film, as a writer who also happens to be a gay man, cathartic for you in a way? And I ask that because writing of this quality often comes from a deeply personal place. I know that the movie is based on Professor Sirius and it's a true story, but I'm guessing that it must have meant something much more than just another project or just another script for you. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. ALIGARH, I woke up one morning, I think we had just finished City Lights after Shahid. And
right.
I think Hansal called me around 8:30 or 9 in the morning, and he asked me, he said, Apu, have you heard of this guy, Professor Sirius? I said, the professor, the gay professor who was found dead in his house. He said, yes. Do you know about it? I said, I was on an NDTV panel the day he died, discussing his death. And he said, did you follow it up? You know what happened? I said, you know what? I mean, I was so angry then and all of that, but I never followed it up, as we do. I mean, these news stories, they come into our lives, we outrage, we get angry, and then we forget all about them. And similarly, the same thing had happened with Shahid, and the same thing had happened with Professor Sirius as well. And he said, yes, this girl, I don't know who she is. Her name is Ishani Banerjee. She's just sent me this story and, news clippings more than anything of his death, of his case, and, suggested that I should make a movie on it. And I said, Hansal, this is fascinating. I said, I would love to write this. He said, are you sure? You think you'd be able to write it? I said, of course. I mean, this is, this is something that I've been waiting for years. Because, when we saw films like Dostana, and then we saw several films where, gay men were lampooned, and were there for comic relief. It actually affected the community in a very adverse way. I don't think the filmmakers intended it for it to be that, but what happened was that people like my family, my parents, their whole idea and understanding of homosexuality came from these films because there was nothing else. Like when I was growing up, Himanshu, uh, in Bombay in the 80s,
Right.
there was nothing out there that even pointed towards.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
There was one man, an activist named Ashok Rao Kavi, who's still standing tall,
Yes, yes.
who would speak up about it, but he was ridiculed. He was made fun of. There was a lot of animosity towards him, and you didn't want to associate with that. So you were actually searching in the dark. And then anytime there was something coming close to it in our cinema, it would be somebody buffooning it, somebody, just there to hit on the hero, and the hero would push him aside and, go for the heroine. And, but he was there to just, make people laugh, So that used to hurt. That really used to hurt. There was one film in the mid 2000s,
Yes.
called My Brother Nikhil.
Yes. I was going to get to that afterwards. Yes.
And that film was a saving grace. That film, I can never be thankful enough to Oneir for making that film and
Beautiful
for
film. Yes, absolutely.
presenting two gay men with such dignity, with such sensitivity, and to the actors, for playing it with so much respect. And I remember that, I'd hoped that this would begin a trend, but
Yes.
there was nothing after that. Between My Brother Nikhil and ALIGARH, there was a good 10 years at least.
Yes. It's it's great that you're talking about this film, because my next question was going to be about that. Because I always felt that My Brother Nikhil was really well received and critically acclaimed, and it's a beautiful film, but it never kind of had the wider impact or the sweeping kind of recognition that ALIGARH got, and maybe it was just ahead of its time. It could be. But I was going to ask you that why do you feel that was the case back when that film released?
Well, it was definitely ahead of its time, and it did get a lot of traction. It had well-known actors playing the part. It had Juhi Chawla in the film as well. It had support from some people from the film industry, and that's what I was surprised myself that there was no follow-up on that film. Actually, maybe about 10 years before that, there was a film. There was Fire.
Yes,
which was also a very, very well-made film.
Yes.
And Shabana Azmi. But that film ran into huge controversy. There were fringe groups that went and attacked cinema halls and closed down the film, and the film went.
That was because of the character names or something, right? I remember vaguely. It was the lead character names in the film. That was like Sita and some. Was that the issue?
So that too, that was one of the issues. But they also spoke about how immoral the film was, and
right.
how it was basically against the whole fabric of family and society and all of those things. Well-known leaders had spoken up against the film and stuff like that. So. It unfortunately, and even though the film did play after that and did reasonably well, nobody dared, make a film on the subject again. I think Deepa Mehta made Fire, and then she made Water, which also had some controversy. So I think filmmakers just said, we're not going to touch this kind of stuff because it's just too much of a headache and it's too frustrating. For Oneir to make,
which is very unfortunate, but
it's very unfortunate. But also if you look back at the whole timeline where we are today, and we're in a very good place with LGBTQ representation in the media, an excellent place today. It's a journey. It's a journey, and it couldn't have begun. It takes time. It takes time to change mindsets. So for an ALIGARH to be made there one has to give due credit to Fire and My Brother Nikhil, because they went out there and
They paved the path, certainly.
they paved the way. They paved the way, undoubtedly. So we could take it further. Also, the thing about Aligarh is it came at a very crucial time. If you remember, in 2009, the Delhi High Court decriminalized homosexuality. And then for between 2009 and 2013, we had this golden period where it was okay to be gay. The law was on our side. And in 2013, when it went to the Supreme Court, we all expected the Supreme Court to uphold this decision, right? But in 2013, the Supreme Court, delivered a terrible blow to human rights when they reversed this decision and homosexuality was criminalized again. So I think it was December 2013, the end of the year, right? And what happened after that was, instead of going back into our shells, a lot of LGBTQ people in India decided to come out and fight harder. Because you see, we had been exposed. It was like a huge betrayal, right? And now there was no going back. There was no going back into closets for many of us. So there was a certain kind of an atmosphere that was determined. People were determined to fight this and for the law to change. There was anger. There was a lot of anger. And I think Aligarh represented that anger, that frustration, that fight back.
Right, that anguish, that kind of struggle.
Exactly. We started making it a year and a bit after this decision, right? So within that time, we had seen 8 years of homosexuality out there in the public domain, right? Being discussed, being dissected. We had seen the support that the media and the thinkers, the intellectuals were offering the LGBTQ, and also unfortunate cases like what happened to Professor Siras. It was something that everyone took up this fight. When Professor Siras was found dead, his story was on every news channel. And I think that making Aligarh at this point, at this time, was almost like a whole nichod. I can't find a better word, an English word for it, concentration of all of this that we had in so many years. So on so many levels, Aligarh was important. For me, if you ask me personally, yes, it was cathartic. Yes, I had seen so many people, some friends of mine who had died before their time, people who had taken their lives, people who had died of illnesses related to their lifestyles. And to be able to tell this story and to be able to give voice to this anguish, I think was a great opportunity, something that I took very seriously.
Right. And that's the power of cinema, right? I mean, it's on one hand, it's just a film, and but it can have this kind of a sparking effect. It could be a movement or something, like just like what Philadelphia, Jonathan Demme's great picture did in Hollywood. I mean, even in a country like U.S., until that movie came out, people were not that straightforward in acknowledging homophobia. And afterwards, once the movie got that kind of the recognition and success, people started accepting that, yes, this is something that is prevalent.
True. And if you see, it begins with a film like Philadelphia, which actually talks about the anguish and the suffering of a gay man, right? And it's tragedy. But it paves the way for films like Birdcage and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and various other films that are a celebration, right? So
yes.
I think Aligarh, was the first step in being able to bring out the tragedy, the travesty of what this community has been subjected to. Now you imagine, someone like me. I've lived my entire life, right, uh, hiding from different sections of society, my real identity. I would go out to events and parties and office events where uh, everybody was there with their wives and their children, and their partners were getting due respect, and but I couldn't even talk about it, let alone bring my partner to it, because there was this whole fear on so many counts. Fear of how society will reject me, ridicule me, but also the fear of the law. Will somebody, plant a camera in my house, you know, and see me do the things that I do? And then what happens to my life? What happens to my career? This always used to be a fear. And then when I saw what happened to Professor Siras, this man, this absolutely dignified, quiet man of letters, this poet, who keeps to himself, doesn't involve himself in other people's affairs, does what he does very well, has reached a certain position in his workplace, is in the privacy of his own bedroom, having an intimate moment, getting through his lonely night with somebody. Yeah. And there are complete strangers who have no business being there, walking into his house with a camera, breaking into his house with a camera, and filming him in his private moments, forcing him. It's one of the cruelest, it's one of the most cruel things that you can do.
Yeah, it's obscene. It's just obscene.
Nobody has any business doing it. And what I found remarkable about this whole case is that it wasn't fought on the basis of, it wasn't fought, 377 was not the issue here. That's not what the lawyers fought. That's not what Lawyers Collective and Anand Grover, the people who represented Professor Siras, fought against. Because when Professor Siras was harangued that this happened, it was actually legal to be gay in India. That was the golden period. That was the 2009 to 2013.
Pre-2013, right?
Yeah. So this happened in 2010 to Professor Siras, right? So what did they fight about? The case was fought on a man's right to his privacy and his dignity. Article 21. It's in our constitution that nobody has the right to invade somebody's private space without his permission. Nobody has the right to get in there. Forget about what he was doing inside there. What were you doing in his house? So I think that became the through line, the message of ALIGARH.
Right.
And that's what caught on, with people who watched the film as well. That was the angle. And also, Professor Siras was not an activist. He was not a gay rights activist. He didn't
Right.
even properly self-identify as gay. He belonged to a generation where the word didn't exist. Right? He probably didn't want to be labeled. So these conversations, these questions, were running in my mind, found their way to the script of ALIGARH.
Right. That's great. Thanks a lot for explaining it so well, Apurva. Because you can tell, I mean, like you said, this movie is much more than, what it seems on the surface. And it's a landmark in, LGBTQ cinema, but it's also about loneliness and breach of privacy, like you said, which affects everybody. And what a performance by Manoj Bajpayee. Good God, what an actor. And now you were editor as well as a writer on this movie, correct?
That's true.
Can you tell us what kind of fine line you need to walk when you're cutting a performance that is so brilliant, where to cut out anything would be leaving out a great piece of performance?
Yeah, it was a tough one. Being my first full-fledged script, I had worked as an additional screenplay writer on Shahid, and I was editing the film, and we were, it was a real low-budget film. We didn't have the funds, so we would shoot, and then we would wait for money, and not knowing when it would come, if it would come. But what Hansal and I would do was jam in the editing room and just find different ways of narrating the story. Whether it was breaking the linearity of it or imposing a linearity to the structure, whether it was deciding that certain scenes didn't really need to be shot. We didn't have the money. Can we do without these scenes? And making a decision to eliminate those scenes from the script, and to replace it with something that fit within this new structure that we were developing. So we had that time, and I got the opportunity there to be able to write certain scenes that would fit within this whole new narrative. And
Right.
and while doing that, I kind of realized that editing and screenwriting are actually not that different from each other.
Right.
You see, because what you're doing is you're finding different ways to narrate this story. The same scene, the same message, is being can be told in several different ways. Now, what way are you going to choose? Are you going to begin with the end? Are you going to end with the beginning? Do you want to follow this particular character and remove the other character who was also part of, who was narrating the story? Do you want to keep it more focused? Do you want it to be about just one character and his journey? So these are all decisions that you make when you're writing a screenplay and while you're editing as well. And I realized that there was something very similar about both these spaces, screenwriting and editing. So by the time we came down to doing ALIGARH, I was far more confident of being able to write the film because I'd already touched upon it in a
right. Yeah. You had a prior experience, yeah.
Yes, to some capacity. I won't take away from the writer Sameer Singh at all, but there were things that I was able to add as a screenwriter to that. And so while writing ALIGARH, I was always aware of the fact that no matter what my script is, with the kind of director Hansal is, who is also going to be extremely spontaneous on set and give his actors complete freedom to improvise and to bring things that not he nor his script would have probably envisaged in the past. There would be a lot of scope for me to actually rewrite this film on the editing table. And this is something that I have always known with Hansal's films, that this is a possibility later on. So by the time I came to the editing table and I saw the scenes that I had written played out on the rushes, I saw so many new things that the actors had added that I had not even dreamed of. Like, for example, the Aapki Nazaron Ne Samjha song, which has become iconic.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah.
It's a one and a half line description in my script. He's having a drink, looking in the mirror, lip syncing a Lata Mangeshkar song. Right? There is nothing more, and for me, it was just a moment. But when I saw the rushes, I saw that in three magnifications that Satya Rai Nagpal shot this scene, was just Manoj on the bed. In all three magnifications, Manoj has just delved so deep into the psyche of this character and lost himself that Hansal was unable to cut this. Say cut.
Yeah, it shows, yeah.
Right. So my first cut was a 90-second cut, maybe less, a 60-second cut. Yeah, because I'm still trying to, deliver what I've written. Right? You're talking about that whole fight that between a writer and an editor, that conflict that can come about.
Yes, that balance, yeah.
That balance. And, and I find that with anybody else's written material as well. There are things that you absolutely love about what's written. And then when you see it in the rushes, you have to take a call whether it's something that you really need. And in this case, I found that every time I made a cut, I was dissatisfied because I had to leave out something really magical in Manoj's performance. So I kept doing versions. And Hansal would watch it and he would like it. He'd say, but Apu, kuch to kam hai. Kuch to kam hai. You want to try moving this shot here? You want to try moving that shot here? Should we put this? One day I just decided to just open up the rushes and to keep the song in its entirety. You know, and it really didn't fit within the place where I had written it. Where I had written it, it happens much later in the screenplay. The appearance of this particular moment, right?
I see. Okay.
And by then the drama is hotting up, and I couldn't afford a 3-minute song. Oh my God, this dog is going mad outside. Can you hold on?
Sure. No worries.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Was that your dog?
No, but they're the neighborhood dogs.
Oh, okay.
They hang out here in the evening.
Right.
My dog's very quiet. He's 12 years old, and he's too old for this nonsense. Yeah. So So I mean, I just opened up the cut, more and more and more, and kept it in its entirety. And I realized that this is the only way to present this scene. There is no other way. Either we just don't keep it if we're going to, butcher it in any way. So once I had that card, and once Hansal saw that card, and I remember us watching it with tears streaming down our eyes, I found another place for it. It almost became Professor Siras's introduction in the film. And that merited the length, So there were things like this in the film,
because then it's kind of setting up the character.
It's setting up the character. It's setting up the fact that this man is hiding and withholding a lot of pain that the outside world is not going to see. And you don't even spell out the pain. You don't need to. It's obvious from what you discover and what transpires that this is probably his entire life. He's had to hide who he really is, in the confines of his room with curtains drawn, and even that was not enough. So there were quite a few things that I found in the script, and it being my first full-fledged script, I found that to be honest, that it was overwritten. I think I might have cut out about 20-25% of the scenes that I wrote. There was another whole angle with the university and the vice chancellor of the university and his own shenanigans and his own reasons to manipulate this case. And while much of that might be true, we found that it was making a villain. It was directly giving you a face you could call a villain. And that is something that we didn't want to do with ALIGARH. Because the moment you can pin it on one person, right, the whole of society is going to absolve itself.
Correct. And you don't want to do that at any cost. Yeah.
No, we don't, because this is not about one person, wronging him. There is no villain in this piece.
Absolutely. Right.
It is the ignorance of society and the fear of society of the unknown, that is prompting people to treat human beings in this manner. So, ALIGARH, on the edit, I had to almost forget my script and kind of rewrite it there. And I thought that was just such a wonderful experience to be able to do that. To be able to find something new.
Right. And the music is such a big piece in here. I mean, you guys have used it beautifully. There's a lovely scene where Professor Siras is singing a Marathi song, which is a very favorite song of mine, Mi Maza Haro Puna.
Yeah.
And was that something that was part of your research, or was that something you wrote in?
That was actually an assistant director on the film who was a Maharashtrian.
Okay.
There was definitely a song that he sings, because it's a beautiful moment there.
And was Professor Siras a big fan of Lata Mangeshkar and Asha Bhosle?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So in his book, Paya Khali Hirwar, is that the book? Yes. Grass Under My Feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've never read it.
Yeah, we could not find that book. We looked everywhere. We looked in libraries. We looked in Nagpur. We looked everywhere. And it's a book he won the Marathi Sahitya Academy for.
Yes.
Award for. But we couldn't find that book anywhere. That book we got after we had begun shooting. But we had found excerpts from that book and poems that he had written, right? And one of them is an ode to Lata Mangeshkar.
Oh, wow.
He loved Lata Mangeshkar. He wrote an ode to her, right?
I would love to read that. If you have that, could you send me that? I would love to read that.
Yeah, let me. There was a
whenever you get time. Yeah, if you
hard
have a
copy
soft copy,
which I do not have a soft copy of, but I will try and hunt that down. In fact, somebody else was asking me recently. So there's that poem, and there's a poem that he writes, an ode to his whiskey, his love for whiskey. And there's one poem called "Hangover Ki Yaad." In English, would be memories of a hangover. So from these things, I think we got glimpses into his personality. Because he was an extremely private man.
Right.
People only knew about him, activists, and knew about him when this this case blew up, and they knew him in that capacity. But to find who this man was inside and who he was inside four walls, there were a lot of it came from the few poems of his that we found from a few friends of his who spoke to us. Again, very few people. They knew him in a very limited capacity, even his friends. And the rest of it was, a gay man imagining what it is like to be in that position, in that place. Right. So, for example, that poem that he wrote, there's a poem in the film called "Oh Beloved Moon."
Yes.
Oh, beloved moon, fear not the dawn that separates us, for we will meet again when the world goes to sleep. Right? So,
yes. Heartbreakingly beautiful.
Thank you. So that poem was inspired from a thought, because we had heard that he had written a poem which was an ode to the moon, right? But we never had that poem. We never found that poem. And when we finally found it, I mean, we'd already written the film. It's not the same as what I finally managed to write, but the thought, the emotion of using the moon as a metaphor for a gay man, a lonely gay man who probably finds companionship in the moon, because you see, a lot of gay men, closeted gay men, are only able to come out is the wrong word, but to show themselves in the dark of the night.
Correct. Express themselves, yeah.
Well, that is where they will cruise. That is where they will find intimacy and sex, because it's not available to most of us in daylight. We will be judged. We will be pelted with stones. We will be arrested. We will be thrown out of our jobs. So it's a very difficult situation, and to go to bed lonely every night for the rest of your life, So what does a man do? I mean, he tries to find a companion for that night. A companion he knows that when the sun's rays come out in the morning, that companion will disappear. He will not recognize him tomorrow. So he builds this relationship with the moon. This again was inspired from a title of a poem that Professor Siras had written. So it's
very
all
interesting
bits and pieces of information that we found, that we speculated, and were able to create a character, partly who he was and partly a projection of who we thought he was.
Right. And even both the songs, both the Lata Madan Mohan songs, Aap Ki Nazron Mein and Betab Dil Ki Tamanna, both those songs just beautifully echo, what that person's anguish, loneliness, and just this kind of a despair that is creeping in. They do such a great job of expressing that.
Yeah, man. But I mean, when I heard them for the first time in the rushes. I mean, Hansal is a huge Lata Mangeshkar fan himself.
Oh, okay.
Understands music very intricately.
They're great choices. Both those songs.
Very
great
beautiful,
choices.
very beautiful choices. Yeah. And the way they were filmed, there was a motif.
Yes.
In his room, But each time you see him in that room playing that song, something has changed in his life, and you can see that the music is slipping away. And then finally,
Yeah.
he's in his room. There is no music. You can see the music system there. But
Yeah. Even the room I thought was like a metaphor for the prison that he finds himself in. Because there's a peculiar kind of a window to the hallway that leads to the room by the door. And it looks like as if it's like it's a prison room, or it's like a entrance to a prison cell. And I thought that was also, it's heartbreaking.
See the tragedy, Himanshu. I mean, it's a prison cell that at least he has windows, and some air can come in. But once you realize that the world won't let you be, they're peeking through your windows. And the scene, it's a very laborious scene. He actually, in that silence, he goes and shuts every window and bolts the door, and locks the door and sits underneath it because he just doesn't trust the world outside. This is his one safe space, and he doesn't believe anymore that even this is safe. Even his prison is not safe enough for him, and that's the last time you see him.
Right. Well, it's just a great movie, and I just want to congratulate you and the whole team. It's just a brilliant film. I think it's one of the best films in the last 10, 15 years, maybe in the last 20 years.
Wow, thank you.
That was part 1 of my chat with Apurva Asrani. Don't forget to listen in on the second part next week. Like I said, Apurva was very candid and genuine throughout the chat, which is all too rare in Bollywood or Hollywood. Our podcast is now widely available on all major platforms. You can get it on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. When you get a chance, do drop us a review on iTunes. It will be much appreciated. Also, please do subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to them. You can follow me on Twitter at loveofcinemasf8. Until next week then, this is Himanshu, and thank you again for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.